Hello, this is Matt on the Moon Lambo channel. Is Ripple's impending IPO good for the price and adoption of XRP? This is going to be a continuation of what I talked about yesterday, but I did not really dive in. I basically shared some opinions from a few people, but I want to take a little bit of a deeper dive. And I'll tell you at the outset, my firm opinion at this point is that this will be, when it happens, very good, not just for Ripple, but the entire XRP ecosystem. Love to have a discussion on this, though. I encourage everybody to engage in their own little bit of critical thinking. I love diversity of thought. And if you that have listened to my channel for some time know that that is certainly the case. So let's go ahead and talk through this. But before we go any further, if you would please delicately tap that like button, and if you're a fan of Ripple and XRP and Ripple's impending IPO, go ahead and subscribe to the Moon Lambo channel. You know what, hell, even if you think it's a bad thing, it's cool. I like diversity of thought, like I said. You go ahead and subscribe to the Moon Lambo channel. All right, and there's a lot of opinions. I'm really looking forward to running through this here. And this isn't going to be, this topic is so big that I'm not intending for this to be some sort of exhaustive conversation that's going to cover every facet and every opinion that could possibly be held by somebody. But I want to get this going here, and I want to get people thinking here. So take a look at this headline. Ripple's IPO will help increase XRP price as major XRP supporter. During the World Economic Forum in Davos the other day, Ripple CEO Brad Garlinghouse said that many cryptocurrency firms are likely to conduct an IPO this year. He also said that Ripple would be among them, but he expects his company to be on the winning side. Some have started expressing their doubts on Twitter that the upcoming IPO of the Ripple giant is going to be good for the XRP price and those who invested in this coin. However, some in the XRP community are definitely positive on this news, believing that XRP investors will benefit from it. An XRP supporter known on Twitter as Stephen Bull from the Deep, with around 15,500 followers, is one of those who supported the idea of Ripple going public. In his recent tweet, he lays out several particular reasons why he thinks that the Ripple public offering will push the XRP price up. He reckons it will get Ripple more funds to expand its network, hire best talent, and solve real problems that only XRP can handle. And here's the tweet from him on the screen right there. How Ripple IPO will help increase XRP price. Ripple will be able to hire more talent, acquire more business partners, build more facilities, and do whatever it takes to solve real problems with XRP as a result. XRP's value will grow along with its utility. Now you can think back to the recent Series C funding round that Ripple went through, in which they acquired an additional $200 million, despite the fact they already had more money than God, as I like to joke. And Brad Garlinghouse stated that it increased their balance sheet flexibility, which is a cheeky way of essentially saying we can do whatever the hell we want with this extra money now in terms of growing the business. Because they will, as a result of that extra funding, do things that they otherwise would not have because they have more of it being money. So with an IPO, more of that. Absolutely. So let's go ahead and jump in here a little bit. Wait, did I want to run through? Oh yeah, here we go. This is where it's going to start to get real interesting in this video, I think, because we're going to get into differing points of view, specifically from an XRP YouTuber that I'm sure many of you listen to. It's Sam from the channel To The Lifeboats here. And I definitely have a different opinion than him. And I want to be clear here when I go in, because I know that you guys that have been listening to me for some time, you know that I love critical thinking. And when I have a different opinion than somebody, it's certainly not to be taken personally. And the reason I like to state that is because I know that humans by nature, very frequently when there's a view against, maybe it's a deeply held belief or opinion, when they hear something counter to that, sometimes humans like to take that personally. And so I just want to be clear that I love engaging in critical thinking. And I don't get offended by people that have opinions that are different than my own. And so that's where I'm coming from with this. I just want to be very clear. I know that most of you already know that, but there are always people coming on board, and I'd feel, concerned if I didn't make sure that people know that's where I'm genuinely coming from here. And so, again, take a look at this. Ripple's upcoming IPO splits XRP investors into happy and disappointed ones. Here's why. And we're going to get into Sam's comments here. I'm sure some of you have read them, but I want to run through them and then just share my take on it. Let me just jump in because they got the fluff intro stuff here. I'd like to skip past that. Okay, so they have the subheading titled That's incredibly disappointing to hear, referencing Ripple's impending IPO. Twitter user Green Eggs and Ham, with over 16,000 followers, and that's Sam, who runs the YouTube channel, XRP YouTube channel, To the Lifeboats, writes that he is disappointed to hear the news from Ripple of plans to go public. He reminds the community that Ripple has plenty of digital cash in the form of XRP stored in their escrow wallet, and that Ripple has enough money to work the way they please without selling shares. And so I want to jump into the actual thread here. So here's what it is. And again, this is Green Eggs and Ham, who is Sam To the Lifeboats. And he wrote this on January 23rd. A Ripple IPO, well, that's incredibly disappointing to hear from Brad Garlinghouse and Ripple. And he tagged Brad Garlinghouse and Ripple on Twitter when he wrote that. What is it they can't do with $500 million in cash and billions more in XRP escrow? The answer: make the early investors billionaires. Look at the returns. And so he's not even really, in that tweet, he's not even making the case that it would be bad for XRP. The way that I read it anyway, and I'd be happy to hear more from him on this and anybody else's take on this, but it seemed to me that it was more of an ideologically driven position. I think that's a fair assessment. You can tell me what you think below in the comments, of course. But he goes, and he had this. So here's Uber. Here's this little screen grab with that. Uber selling. Shareholders to sell $1.3 billion worth of shares in the ride-hailing firm's IPO. And you can see there's a list right there and how much money is to be made. And so he seems to fundamentally have a problem with those early investors making them rich. Now, I'll tell you what, I fundamentally don't have a trouble with that. Let me read one more tweet, and then I'll show you my opinion. There's another tweet from him. He responded to his own tweet, and he wrote, this is nothing but a wealth transfer mechanism, and I find it utterly disgusting. There is zero reason for Ripple to become a publicly traded company. They don't need the funds. I expected more from these guys. Okay, so as far as wealth transfer, and then this is what he's talking about again, that's why he had this little picture with Uber and their IPO, about how much money those investors would make selling it. I fundamentally don't have a problem with people selling something that they own, even if it results in them becoming ridiculously wealthy. In fact, isn't it the case that all of us in the XRP community that hold XRP, we believe and certainly hope that the XRP price will drive up substantially higher over time based on real-world adoption and utility, so that we can then sell it and make, ideally, lots of money. That's a wealth transfer. And conceptually, I don't have fundamentally a problem with that, because nobody's being forced to buy anything. It's an open market, and I just don't have a problem with people that are super wealthy. That's just my humble opinion right there. And I think in order to have an opinion like that, and that's why I think it's so fun to talk through this stuff, because it's a fair point that Sam's bringing up. I just disagree. But, when he's talking about, this wealth transfer, to believe something like that, it's almost as if one would have to believe that the way money moves around the planet, it's a zero-sum game, meaning that if somebody has $1, then it is explicitly the case that it's taken from somebody else, or somebody else flatly can't have it. But that's not the case, because new wealth is always being created. If you want to conceptually think through how the hell does that work, and I don't want to get too into like how the sausage is made for the sake of this video. That'd be outside the scope of this. But just consider if the same amount of dollars available when the country had, in the United States where I live, had half as many citizens as it does today. Just imagine if there weren't new wealth generated, everybody would be destitute. So there's always new wealth being created, and people holding money, it doesn't give them any special power over you. And as long as you see, and again, I don't want to get anything that would sound overly political or anything like that. I'm just talking about fundamentally why I don't have a problem with what Ripple's doing, as framed by what Sam wrote here. As long as all classes have the same opportunity and ideally are growing, and there's nothing fundamentally wrong. And I'm not saying that there is or isn't. I'm not getting into that type of political discussion. Period. I'm just saying as long as that happening fundamentally, I'm okay. And so when we're talking about a quote unquote wealth transfer here, we're just talking about people that are willing to buy and sell. I also think that right now, it kind of sucks due to regulations. Did you know that in order to buy Ripple, because look, there's no IPO yet. Did you know that you can buy Ripple the company? Did you know that? The barriers to entry on that's what I'd call disgusting. It's so heavily regulated that the average person has no opportunity to buy. In fact, and I'm going to have to pull from memory, so I apologize if I'm a little bit off. I'm pulling up from memory from like probably literally a year and a half ago when I researched this. But in order to buy into Ripple, I think, and this is not Ripple having these requirements. It's the United States government here. So where I live, and I think you have to either have a net worth of at least $1 million, or it was something along the lines of if you don't have that, you need to be earning a salary. And maybe that would include commission or whatever, this or that, but whatever you're doing for a living, you have to pull in a compensation of $250,000 per year. And I apologize if I'm a little off, but it was something along those lines. I'm confident stating that. And so the average person doesn't even have an opportunity to buy in. Now, with an initial public offering, you're giving people to buy into something that they believe is going to have tremendous staying power. And without that opportunity being presented via an IPO, like the average person simply can't do that. I'm not a fan of that. And so as far as whether or not they need it, that's not the point. If you can, and this is just my opinion again, of course, but think about any IPO that has ever occurred in the history of IPOs. Do you think that those companies that went through these IPOs were not well positioned from a cash perspective? Understand that, typically this happens after Series C funding, right? That's pretty common anyway, right? And the reason that Series C funding happens is because there's a company that's already proved its chops. And those investors in Series C, they want something that's more of a sure bet, right? And so, from that perspective, it's to me, it's just the case that by engaging in that funding and going through the IPO, they can do more of what they were already doing. But understand that any IPO that's ever occurred, it's not that they couldn't have continued to exist, as is the case with Ripple, but they can do any more. Think about that term that Brad Garlinghouse stated, balance sheet flexibility. And so there's more of that. It's more of the same. They already have top employees. They already have crazy connections. But why look, if there's something to this company, why would more people not want to get involved, and why shouldn't they be able to, and why is that disgusting? Like, to me, it's not, unless it's a position which is ideologically driven, which is based on what he said. That's my best honest interpretation. And if that's not where he's coming from, that's fine. I'm still curious to hear more from him, and that's fine. But if it's ideologically driven, I don't think that's a reason for the. Because if that's your stance, then IPOs shouldn't exist, and people shouldn't have an opportunity to buy publicly traded companies. Yeah, and to me, then you're talking about like take that to its natural conclusion logically. Should we not have the stock market? Should you not be able to buy into index funds at the S&P 500? Like where do you draw the line? Because the devil's always in the details. Why not? Okay, so if you don't want Ripple to do this, why is it just Ripple? Is it all the other companies that have done IPOs? Like, where are you coming from on this? And so from that perspective, it makes all the sense in the world to me that this should go through. People want to, and there's a lot of money to be made, and I don't think that's evil. I don't think that's bad, and I don't think that it's some sort of disgusting movement of money between willing participants who are buying and selling stock of Ripple at that point. I just don't see it that way. Now, as far as the long-term price of XRP, I'd be curious to hear Sam's outlook, and maybe he said it, maybe I just haven't seen it. He may have talked about it in a video or something that I just missed, because I do watch his stuff from time to time. I watch a ton of XRP YouTubers, but as far as the price of XRP, I don't see how this could possibly be a bad thing. We're just talking about doing more of what's already working for Ripple. That's fundamentally what we're talking about here. And so I'd love to hear what you guys think on that. Now, here's a tweet from fellow XRP YouTuber Crypto Eddie, who read what Sam wrote there. And it was the tweet that says, "This is nothing but a wealth transfer mechanism, and I find it utterly disgusting. There is zero reason for Ripple to become a publicly traded company. They don't need the funds. I expected more from these guys." Crypto Eddie retweeted that. And here's what she wrote. "I've given some thought to Sam's tweet. Ripple is in the position to negotiate its terms from XRP holders to participate in the IPO. I'm an idealist inside a realist mind, always imagining the impossible. Ripple, please surprise us." So that's what she had to say on that. And I've got some other tweets. I can share some of these. I don't want this video to go too long, though. Here's one from Michael Arrington, and he writes, "Disregard FUD around a Ripple IPO. It's healthy and awesome if when it happens. Ripple's Brad Garlinghouse hence firm may seek IPO within 12 months. All right, next, here we go. Mickey B. Fresh. It's at Mr. Fresh Time on Twitter. I just came across this. I literally typed it in the search bar on Twitter. I typed in Ripple IPO and just found a bunch of opinions from people because I was curious. So Mickey B. Fresh wrote, Bob Way spoke a year ago at about this exact point prior to an IPO. The FUD is based on wild speculation. The facts point to everything will be beneficial for XRP. Ripple stock is separate asset class versus XRP. XRP equals settlement asset. The clowns on Twitter spewing FUD is comical, in my opinion. Yeah, and look, I think it's pretty clear. I'm going to show you a little bit of proof for this. I think that those individuals in the XRP community that hold the position that Ripple should not go through an IPO, they're in a minority. And it's not even to say that people in the minority are wrong about stuff, and I still have diversity of thought. But I do want to point out that I don't think that it's the vast majority of individuals in the XRP community that hold that position. Here's a tweet from Mark Bell. IPO, to hold or sell XRP, that is the question. More Ripple shareholders equals more XRP, adoption/awareness. Large investors equals more XRP sales to complement their investment. If there is a Ripple IPO, I am not worried as XRP solves world problems. Hold your XRP. And I'll tell you what, I was hard-pressed to find anything negative about... oh wow, this person, they blocked their tweets. I was going to read something from this guy, and when I mapped up my videos earlier, and that's he's no longer public. Okay, we'll move on to the next one. But yeah, I was having a hard time finding tweets that were anti-Ripple IPO. And so here's another one from Mr. B XRP. It brings Ripple and XRP out of the skeptical shadow of the cryptocurrency world and into the light of the mainstream media and conventional investors. Suddenly, we aren't fools invested in magical internet money. And that's Mr. B. I'm sure many of you are very familiar with him. He's been on Twitter forever, has a huge following on Twitter. I wonder what he's up to now. Let's take a look. 22,600. That's something. And he's also an XRP YouTuber. He's a newer one. He started doing that within the last, I want to say, couple months or so. And he ran this poll, too. Take a look at this. Mr. B. XRP. Do you think Ripple going public will help to increase XRP's value and adoption? I clicked yes. And that's 60% of respondents clicked yes, 13.7% said no, and 20.3% said no idea. So understand that the negative response was only 13.7%. And I'm sure that some of you out there listening right now maybe hold that position, but I would encourage you to just keep thinking through it. And if you have a strong case to make, I legitimately think it's really fun to run through this stuff. So if you would want to drop a comment below or tell me why you firmly believe the way you do, I would definitely love to hear from you. But I better wrap up this video before it goes any longer. Thank you so much for listening. I am not a financial advisor. Do not buy or sell anything because of anything that I say or write. That would be a very, very, very bad idea. Until next time, to the moon, Lambo!